You know, when I started this YouTube channel a little over a year ago, it was seriously just a creative outlet. I figured I'll make some videos about some things that I like to do, learn a little bit more about editing, shooting the videos, and so forth. And I just really like YouTube. I've learned a lot from it, and I thought I'd give back. The one thing I wasn't prepared for, though, was a lot of the comments. I wasn't actually prepared for people to watch the shit. And you know, it's been really interesting and motivating to see people comment, help each other out. You know, I've got the occasional troll, but I just delete them because they're just toxic people and they don't add any value. But for the most part, there's some really good comments out there. Y'all are a pretty awesome bunch. And I try to take some time each morning, you know, 15 to 20 minutes over some coffee, scroll through the comments, see what's come in, answer some questions that I can. And I thought I'd take a moment and just maybe do a short video of answering some of these comments live. So let's take a look at some of these comments together. From my GMRS video. So this GMRS works a lot like CB, leaving out the repeater part. Short distance in line of sight. Is it better than CB for off-roading? Well, it depends, and I know people hate that answer. So the short answer to your question, in my opinion, is no, CB is not necessarily worse or better than GMRS for off-roading. I happen to like GMRS because there's more hardware, I believe, to choose from. You have higher output power for a licensed GMRS. You can go up to 50 watts, I believe, on the upper channels from a mobile rig, whereas CB, you're limited to 4 watts, I think it is. You have 40 channels on CB, 22 on GMRS. GMRS, you can take advantage of repeaters if they happen to be in your area for longer distance communications. But really, again, it's just going to come down to what your group uses. If they're all using CB, get a CB. If they're all using GMRS, get a GMRS. GMRS radio again. Why do I need a license to use GMRS radio? Man, you just do. What can I say? I talked to the FCC. I'm just a messenger. Can you use one like without a license? Yeah, there's nothing physically preventing you from picking it up and pushing a button. But, you know, I try to keep things above board, especially if I'm going to be talking about it in public, right? Public persona, I want to keep follow the rules. So, yeah, short answer, you just do. FCC says so. Prince roof rack install. Where do you plan on mounting your full-size spare? Good question. I actually used to put it inside the car, but you know, the cargo space in the Crosstrek is precious. So I ended up getting a rigged swing-out tire carrier, which I really love. And so right now my full-size spare is sitting on that thing. I'll do a separate video on reviewing that because in addition to getting the swing-out tire carrier, I picked up a cheap table that I think was designed for a Jeep and was able to mount it to it. So that's proven really handy. Another GMRS radio comment. Hey Tom, were you an instructor in the Corps? Great presentation. Not really. I mean, you know, most NCOs and so forth, they'll do something, you know, PMIs, they call them primary military instructions, I believe, where you'll give periods of instruction to other Marines or other whomever. But no, I was actually a POG, so I was in the Air Wing. I got to play with Hueys and Cobras, which was really damn cool. Not an instructor. I have a question for anyone who knows about radios. Are Baofeng or ham radios dangerous? I mean, maybe as a weapon of opportunity. I don't think I've seen someone actually report being bludgeoned to death by a Baofeng. Maybe some of the bigger units. I need you to qualify dangerous, man. What do you mean dangerous? Like if you want to cause civil unrest with some kind of communications, sure. If you're talking about a physical weapon, well, I mean, with enough imagination, again, anything can be used as a weapon. So, but I'm gonna say no. They're kind of like guns, right? It depends on the user. My firearms don't jump out of the safe and shoot me, but if I'm using them with malicious intent, yeah, they can be dangerous. Don't know what else to say about that one. From the coolest radio you've probably never heard of. Does this work without needing any internet service to operate it? Yes, actually, that's why I like it. So I didn't make that clear in my video because I was downloading things like the software and looking up frequencies online. But once you know what frequencies you want to listen to, you can put your computer or your tablet or whatever in airplane mode, be completely independent of civil infrastructure as far as internet and so forth, and still pick up on all those signals and process them through the software-defined radio dongle. So no, you do not need any internet service to operate an SDR radio. Also from the same video, what mount do you use for your Yaesu FTM 400XD? I love this thing. This is actually a wedge mount from LidoRadio.com. I'll put a link in the description below. I ended up using this mounting plate from the kit and attaching it to a RAM mount on my dash, which was a separate mod. But by itself, it's basically a wedge that fits between your center console, has a RAM arm, and a mount that's designed for the FTM 400. On lidoradio.com, you can also find a whole bunch of other custom mounts specifically designed for specific radios. So other Yaesus, other Kenwoods, and so forth. So check them out. Hey bud, tried to find you at your Instagram handle. No go. Did you change the name? Yes, I'm in my mid-40s, man. What can I say? I haven't really grown up with Instagram. I didn't know you can change your handle. So once I learned that you could, and I kind of adopted this Tom the Dilettante name, I changed that. So my Instagram handle is @TomTheDilettante. So I forgot what it used to be, but that's where you can find me now. Videos take a lot of work to produce, at least the way I want to produce them. So I'm not putting them out with the frequency that I would like to, just because, you know, job. So on Instagram, I try to post more frequently, just sort of day-to-day pictures, what's up, and I try to answer questions that I see coming from there as well. What a pain in the ass. I was considering getting a radio until I saw the fees and BS involved in the license. It's a GMRS license, man. I mean, literally, you just go on the FCC website, fill out a form, pay them, and you get a call sign. I don't know how much simpler they can make it, but I don't know what to tell you, man. If that's the kind of complexity that turns you off, then trust me, radio is not your hobby. You are definitely bored, LOL. It says the guy who has nothing else better to do with his time than to troll my comments. Some black exhaust smoke would probably save your life. Carbon monoxide is invisible, and sound a body hitting the floor. Yeah, you know, so this is my Chinese diesel heater review when I fired it up in my shop, and I got a lot of flack for that one. I think it was my failure. I didn't show the fact that I had an open garage door, you know, a fire extinguisher, and I actually have 2 carbon monoxide detectors in my shop that did not go off. So note to self, next time I do something with a combustible engine, either give a hell of a disclaimer or just do it outside. But you know what? It was cold. It was for the convenience of filming. I think I put a comment in there just to kind of clarify, but no, they're right. If you did watch that video and try to emulate me by running your diesel heater inside a house or garage, don't do that. Make sure any exhaust is properly vented outside and you have appropriate safety around you, carbon monoxide detectors and so forth. I find SDR and ham radio extremely boring compared to other technical stuff like programming. With my Baofeng, I can only listen to a couple of pensioners talking in the evening. A couple things to unpack. Programming. So program is really sort of the bar for things that aren't boring. I've done programming. It's not that exciting. Anyway, I think you might be underestimating how programming and amateur radio can complement each other with enough imagination. So, for example, with an Arduino and a DTMF decoder, you can control relays through radio to do all sorts of things, which can be pretty cool. Or you can make a Raspberry Pi satellite tracker in order to track the International Space Station, and you can actually talk to the International Space Station actually has a repeater, so you fire off your signal up into the ISS through space. Anyone else with line of sight to it, you can talk to. And that goes for a couple other satellites too. I don't think in North America though. Anyway, my point is that programming and amateur radio are not two completely separate things. As a matter of fact, those two overlap quite a bit. And like I said, if you're interested in, just maybe Google, Arduino or Raspberry Pi projects for amateur radio, and you might be surprised at what you find out. This was very helpful. If GMRS radios are pre-programmed because of restrictions, why do some have keypads and/or market themselves as programmable? What is there to program? Thanks. Good question. I mean, if you're used to the Midlands, which usually just have a couple of buttons, a menu, and up and a down and whatnot, and then you get like a Radiodity GM30 or something, or a Baofeng that's actually got a keypad. What they mean by programmable is you can use that keypad to do anything from simple navigation of the GMRS radio channels. You can pop in like 010 for channel 10, 019 for channel 19, and so forth. I happen to like the ones with the keypad because oftentimes you'll get quick shortcuts so you don't have to go through a big menu list of things to make something happen. For example, to turn on a CTCSS tone or a DCS tone, if you want to lock the radio, if you want to change channels, change volumes, and so forth. So programming it can basically means configuring your radio the way that you want to use it, depending on how you're using it. I, for example, have a couple channel 21s, one that's open with no tone, another one that's got a CTCSS tone that I use for communicating with friends on the road. I'll also program in repeater channels along with their respective tones. You can have a couple repeaters near you that might share the same channel, but their uplink and downlink tones differ. So rather than having to change it each time you want to talk, you can go ahead and program in your radio to have them independent. I hope that makes sense. That's the best way I can explain it, I think. For my first Chinese diesel heater, so what's the consensus? Almost 4 months of usage. You know, my timing on that one sucked. I bought that thing, I think, in February or March. I didn't really have a whole lot of cold months left here in the Midwest. So it worked great for me while I was using it in the early spring when we're still around the 30s and so forth, but I haven't tested it yet like in sub-zero weather. So this winter I'll be testing it out to warm up my shop, warm up other areas, see how well it holds up in a brutal Chicago winter. I think it's going to be a cold one, but anyway, we'll see. That knife flip was smooth. Yeah, you know, I do love my pocket knives. I think what he's referring to was my Spyderco Para 3, and what I did is I used what I call the Spidey flick. Just flick it right open. Looks like Spider-Man flicking it up. I've seen some people just use their thumb, right? Open it up that way. Other people will grab it by the side and flip it that way. I think that's kind of dorky. But the Spidey flick, my best friend taught me that, and it's kind of like a knife fidget spinner. What you do is you hold it like this, take your middle finger, and you just flick it up like that. Of course, it's hard to do this way. So, and that's the Spidey flick. What's the name of the track at the end of this video? Dilettante, wishing you all a wonderful week. Have a good one. That track is called Driving Inspiration Business Electronic. It's kind of a lame name, but it's by an artist called Systine, which actually is one of the things that I learned or that I do for my YouTube channel. I actually subscribe to a couple different providers for sound effects and music. That one came from storyblocks.com. I'll put a link to that in the below. I'm not affiliated with them or anything, but if you're curious to kind of go through there, you can find video assets, pictures, sound effects, music, and so forth. It's a subscription service. So if you subscribe to just the music or just the sound effects or whatever, you can download so many indefinitely for the year. The other service that I subscribe to is Epidemic Sound, which I happen to like a little bit more than Storyblocks because I think their music library is pretty good. I use a lot of their stuff on my videos. For the hamstick dipole, you have some great videos and they are well produced. Thank you. How did this antenna work on your trip? Hope to see more radio content from you. 73. That antenna worked great. So I have a 20 meter and 40 meter hamsticks that I configure in that dipole. I took them to my last trip back in September to Colorado with me. I actually jumped on some HF net, which was pretty cool. I can't remember where they were located, but they did have some. I think the net controller was in Kentucky. But anyway, I was picking up traffic from pretty much across the country, from Arizona to I think Vermont. Was as far west and east respectively as I heard, and I was in Colorado, and so we were chatting away. It was pretty cool. Rallitek engine and transmission skid plate video. Thank you, Tom. Great video of installation. Curious question, please. Why Rallitek versus Primitive Racing or other skid plates? Thank you. No real reason. I think what appealed to me on the Rallitek was that it was aluminum, not steel, because the thing's just a dog, and power-wise, I needed to save weight. And I think I liked the way it looked more than the Primitive Racing. But I do have the Primitive Racing rear differential cover, and that thing's phenomenal. I mean, its design, its construction, very beautiful. I almost do regret not going with Primitive Racing for my skids, but that Rallitek skid plate has saved my bacon more than a couple of times. I think each time I go out and send it a little bit too hard, I dent that thing up and have to hammer it back flat, which I don't know is a good or bad thing. The way I look at it is it's doing its job. It's not steel, it's not something super robust, so it's really basically a sacrificial piece of metal that'll take the brunt of any impacts as opposed to my oil pan or transmission pan, so I'm going to call it a win. How did you run the wires to your radio display through the console? Like most things on my car, I just made a hole, either drill a hole or filed a hole. On this one, I actually just filed a notch in the back of the panel that comes off where I mounted that ram rail. And ran the wire right through that, and then it just kind of goes back behind the head unit, behind the dash and the steering wheel, and then down to the floor. Does the booster require any kind of service plan? My cell booster, my WeBoost. No, all it does is it amplifies existing cell signals and then retransmits it on a small antenna in your car or wherever you happen to place the internal transmitter. One common misconception, though, that I've seen in the comments is that these things don't create a cell signal, right? If you're out with no service, this thing is not going to help you at all. You have to have at least a little bit of cell service. That's why they call it a cell booster. It needs something in order to boost. So if you're down to one bar, like I found myself several times, like in Utah or Colorado, turn that sucker on, and I was full bars LTE. I was doing web conferences for work, like in the middle of Valley of the Gods, which was amazing. So It does work, but it does have its limitations. But no, it doesn't require a service plan. Tom, have you had the CVT serviced since this trip where it got pretty hot? I know they say it's lifetime fluid, but there's no way the fluid's properties remain the same after getting that hot, 240 to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. Agreed. Yeah, this lifetime fluid stuff, I think it's bullshit. No one's ever quantified lifetime. Lifetime, if you ask someone like a dealer, is going to say, well, until the component's dead. That's not helpful, right? That could be 50,000 miles, that could be 300,000 miles, who knows? Anyway, to answer your question, yes, I have serviced the fluid. As a matter of fact, when I got back from that trip on my next oil change, because I paid for the service plan for the first 3 years, I did ask them to replace the CVT fluid, and they did. Before my next trip, when I was going to run it pretty hard, I actually did install a CVT cooler up front, and I owe you all a video on that one. But it did work out pretty well. It helped keep the temperatures down, but I do want to add an aftermarket like switchable fan in front of it, because what I did find is on the trails I was still running pretty hot because the vehicle wasn't moving that fast, so I didn't have a whole lot of airflow over the cooler. So I don't think it matters the size of the cooler you've got. If you've got no airflow over it, it's not going to work. But yeah, so I think I had that CVT fluid changed at around 18,000 miles or so. And you know what? I'm just going to keep changing it. I figure you can't kill a transmission if you keep it full of fresh fluid. From the GMRS video, where we can purchase this product. That video wasn't about a product per se, but if you're referring to GMRS radios in general, Amazon, Radioddity, Redivis, I mean, there's a number of manufacturers out there in Midland that you can buy those kind of radios. I tend to go Amazon because most Amazon's prices are comparable to the manufacturer's sites. Check though, so you get a good deal. One thing I don't recommend Amazon for though is any kind of ham radio, aside from a Baofeng. Baofeng you can find cheap. But if you're interested in like a Kenwood or a Yaesu or some other kind of decent quality ham radio, especially a handheld, don't go to Amazon. Their prices are super steep. Instead, go to places like DX Engineering or Ham Radio Outlet. You're going to find a lot better prices there and much better service, to be honest. Anyone know of any software-only methods of achieving similar results, such as streaming service, for example? Yeah, actually, there's a number of, it's called WebSDR. So if you just Google or type in WebSDR, you're going to find a lot of software-defined radios that are out there connected to computers and cool antennas that are shared on the internet. You can actually go in and pick different frequencies to listen to. You don't need to invest in the hardware or any software you own. Just through a web browser, you can control someone else's SDR and listen at your discretion. I'll bet your neighbors love you. Every time you key up, all they hear is your chatter over their speakers. What a remarkably ignorant comment. I'm often asked why you need a license for amateur radio, and that's one of them, right? It's so that you know enough about radio hardware and so forth to not cause any malicious interference, or just not cause any interference. So if you set your station up well and you know what you're doing, you're not going to be causing your neighbor problems. I like how if you're a backseat passenger, you get power for your phone and also guaranteed death by fire extinguisher in collision. It's really the package deal. Yeah, well, all right. I don't normally have passengers in my rear seat, but point taken, and I did think about that, and right now my setup is such that I've got the fire extinguisher mounted lower outside of, head bonking space on a aluminum molly panel that I got from Orbis Overlanding behind my passenger seat, behind my seat. And so, yeah, that thing's pretty awesome. But, good point. As you're mounting things, make sure they don't become a fatal projectile in a collision, either for you or your crew. So that's it. I thought I'd share with you some of the comments that I normally get, as well as my responses. If you like this kind of content, hit that like below. If you're like, dude, just keep putting out the DIY stuff, then let me know. Anyway, until the next time, this is Tom the Dilettante. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you again soon. Have a good one.